My name's Elizabeth Calizzi. My husband's name is John. Um, Recently, he's posted two videos on YouTube, one entitled Seroquel and Klonopin Withdrawal Nearly Killed Me. The second one entitled Seroquel and Klonopin Withdrawal Caused Me Major Heart Attacks. So, for those of you that haven't watched those first, I suggest you watch those first because you'll have his perspective being the person going through um, the withdrawals off of these psychiatric meds, and so you'll hear his story, an important story that I'm glad that he was able to tell. It seems to have helped a lot of people, and we're both grateful for that. That's the whole point of what we're doing. Um, we're trying to get the message out, like countless others of you are, um, on YouTube, about the seriousness of these medications, um, especially in the withdrawal phase for people who have been on them for a certain amount of time and experience these withdrawals. So the reason I'm doing this video is to share the wife's perspective, the significant other's perspective, um, about my my experience with all of this. Um, and I guess I'll start by sharing kind of what John already touched on, which is, uh, we met in December 2012. Um, we were engaged pretty quickly. We knew we were right for each other. And we now been married. It'll be 4 years in May of 2017. Um, and it has been quite a ride, to say the least. Meaning the extent of the challenges that we have experienced going through what we've gone through, and as you'll hear in John's video, and still continue to go through, are extremely challenging. They challenge you on every level, as he said. And they, of course, challenge me on every level, being his spouse, being so close and connected that we are, living together. Um, I feel what he feels. So I, uh, I'm run down after, you know, 3 years of doing this. I guess I should backtrack. He started his withdrawal process um, back in 2013, somewhere in August, September. He was on actually Thorazine as well. So it was Seroquel, Thorazine, and Klonopin, quite a cocktail. So he started his withdrawal, his tapering back then. Okay. So, and like I said, we're not quite finished. He's off of the Seroquel, he's off the Klonopin and the Thorazine, thank God. And he's starting to do a little better. But he's still on Lunesta for sleep, which helps him with sleep. But, he wants to taper off that as well because we found out that Lunesta um, is very similar to Klonopin in that it um, affects the same neural pathways in the brain that Klonopin does. No surprise. So, we have one school of thought that says, okay, well, it's not as addicting as Klonopin, but, it remains to be seen. We're hoping that once he starts tapering, it won't be as bad as it was for the Klonopin. But he's not there yet. So just to let you know, for those of you that are wondering how he's doing, he is doing a lot better. When we first started this path, we had, I think he went into this in his video, we had a well-renowned, world-renowned nutritionist that was helping us with his tapering, but really didn't know how you need to treat, you know, someone like this that's this sensitive and having these withdrawals, because he was on the meds for so long. So I think he shared in when he had his psychiatric breakdown, he went into a hospital, psychiatric hospital, and met a woman there that told him about the Road Back program. And it's right here. It's called the Road Back program, How to Get Off Psychoactive Drugs Safely. You can go online and Google it. And they have a website. And so, you know, for a while, maybe a year and a half, we were using those supplements to help support the tapering withdrawal process. And I think they helped, you know, for a time, but they're no longer helping. He's not really noticing any you know, positive effects from it. So we decided to try medical marijuana. We actually tried that in the past and didn't know that there was actually medical marijuana out there that has no THC or very, very small amounts of THC. So it didn't help him back then, you know. But now he is taking and has been taking medical marijuana for the last week and a half, excuse me, in the form of chews that have no THC, and they're helping. They help with the racing thoughts and the anxiety. They help calm the body down. His body aches aren't anywhere near as bad as they were. And of course, he doesn't have the high that you get off, you know, smoking marijuana. It's not like that. And it helps him sleep at night. So he takes one that's for insomnia, that's a chew that has melatonin in it, which helps with the insomnia, which he's taking along with the Lunesta. So miraculously, for the last week and a half of the last over 3 years of him not sleeping, he's finally sleeping at least for a week and a half pretty consistently. I mean, he still wakes up, but he's able to go back to sleep, which he wasn't before. So that's the update of the status of him, if any of you were wondering that have watched his videos. And we thank you very much for your comments and your support. I think that's so important when you're watching these videos, because there's so many out there of, you know, people going through this. You know, that we comment, we share our support, we you know, build this community of people, you know, even if it's on YouTube, to help each other, support each other, because as I think my husband mentioned in the video, we have no support. Zero. I mean, you know, we live with my mom right now, and yes, she's supportive, but only to a certain extent, because, you know, even though she's watched his videos and we've talked to her about, you know, these medications, I don't think she fully grasps it. You know, she hasn't been like me, living day in and day out, you know, seeing what he's going through, you know, as I have. And he doesn't share with her too much because he doesn't want her to get worried. But other than that, um, I think he said we have no friends. I did have uh, two close friends, and I told them briefly what was happening. But even at the time, we didn't even have the knowledge we have now about the um, the effects of what people go through when they try to get off these meds. We were in the beginning stages, and I was trying to explain it to my friends, and they were, supportive as they could and compassionate as they could. But basically, they just stopped calling. They stopped texting. Um, it's kind of like they moved on. I had one friend that basically couldn't handle it and didn't want to listen to my side and have me explain and just have a communication about what's going on um, and uh, trying to help out by hearing my side. She just basically, uh, after many years of friendship, said I can't do this. So, um, you know, we have no support. Um, I mean, he has, a couple close friends that he's made. He has one close friend that he has that lives up north, um, to help. But as far as his family is concerned, they're so wrapped up in their own stuff because there's just so much going on in the world right now and in everybody's lives and the stress and blah blah that people have their own shit to deal with. So we're pretty much on our own. I'm totally on my own. That's another reason why I made this video, to reach out to those that have significant others that are still in relationships with them, because that's another big thing, is maintaining a relationship in the throes of this. Because I don't see, unless both of you have a strong foundation um, in your relationship and a strong love, like me and my husband do, you won't make it. I mean, that's just a fact. There's, you know, it's too much. I mean, the only people who know what I'm talking about are the significant others of those that are going through it, that are still with them and hanging in there with them, that know what I'm talking about. Because it will tap you on every level, just like they're tapped on every level, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And because in my case, and I'm sure in your cases, those of you that are the significant others of the people that are going through it, you're now the sole provider. Maybe you were before, but now you for sure are. My husband has had his own business, which thankfully we're still holding on to, um, barely, because he can't work. But our customers, thankfully, are still loyal to us. So we still have our own business, and hopefully he'll be able to get back on his feet and start working again. Because he was the main source of income, I was like supplemental income. Um, uh, I haven't been able to find any full-time work in my capacity for a long time. So I've just done part-time work, and that's basically how we're surviving, and have survived for the last 3 years, by deferring our debt, deferring our bills, paying the minimum. I mean, you guys, I'm sure, know what I'm talking about. And borrowing money, and every single penny that I make, which is not consistent because I'm self-employed myself, um, goes, to bills and expenses, right? And he can't, file for disability because he never even paid himself for the business. Um, You know, it's really hard, and we live in California. It's really hard to have a small business living in California, for those of you that know what I'm talking about. You are hit on every level: state, federal, city, insurance, workers' comp. I mean, they hit you at every angle with bills that are due. So you can never get ahead. You can never make a profit. And any profit that you make goes right back into your living expenses. So my husband never paid himself, is what I'm trying to say. So if you don't pay yourself, then you can't collect disability because you didn't pay into the system. So that's why he can't collect disability. And honestly, even if he did, I'm sure those of you know, at least those of you who live in California, unless you make a huge amount of income for a significant period of time, you're not going to get enough to live off of. Yourself, and forget about your family, forget about if you have any kids. You know, we don't have children. We want to have children. You know, I'm not getting any younger. I met him in my 40s, you know, and then all this shit happened. And, you know, there's no way we can have physically, he can have children right now. And he hasn't been able to. And I know those of you that are going through this, the men understand that without getting into detail. So, you know, that's affected our sex life, our ability to have children. You know, I'm hoping, you know, that we still can. I do have hope. And we just kind of leave it at that. But that's another consequence of the effects of what happens when people get on these medications and have families, or want to have kids. So, so yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's easier for us because we don't have kids. I mean, we watch videos and we've read your comments of those of you that do have children, and you know, my heart goes out to you. My jaw drops that any of you can even take care of your own children. I know it's hard for a lot of you. That now it's on, you know, your significant other, your spouse, or your family members to do that, and because you can't, and I totally understand that, and so does my husband, and I feel so bad. You know, I can't even imagine. I say that to John all the time. My God, if we had kids, because I take care of him full time, you know, and then I work 2 jobs. I have 2 part-time jobs, so I'm tapped. So to actually have to take care of kids on top of that, no way. I couldn't do it. I would absolutely need help. So we're blessed in that sense, but in a sense, like I said, you know, we still do want to have children, and hopefully we still can. So, so what has it been like for me? Well, you've heard part of it. When we first started going through this, when he first started tapering off the meds that he had been on for so long, it was a horrific nightmare. Horrific. It was hell every single day. And this, don't get me wrong, this isn't blaming him. This has nothing to do with him. This is what happens, as you know, when you get off or try to get off the meds, the withdrawals. And I didn't know what to do because I didn't have enough education at that point to know what was going to happen or could potentially happen We didn't know anybody else that was going through this. We didn't go to YouTube and look at the videos until just recently, um, you know, about people who have already gone through this and gotten to the other side, thankfully. Um, so we were totally on our own, totally trusting this nutritionist to help us get through it, and nothing was working. He was absolutely 100% sleepless, didn't sleep a wink, had the racing thoughts, level 10 body aches, level 10 anxiety, just to name a few. And he had to run a business, you know, and he had a lot of hats he had to wear. So I was, trying to help him as much as I could, and I did, and I still do. But that first year, that was 2013, right? August, September. We we moved in July of 2013 to another home because the current one we were renting and living in, we couldn't live there anymore. So, as he's starting to get off these meds, or beginning to, and having the withdrawals, we're having to move. And I mean move the business, which is boxes and equipment galore, on top of our own personal stuff. And we basically had to do it all ourselves. We had a little bit of help, but not a lot, because we just didn't have a lot of people we knew to help us. And that was hell. That was hell, but we did it, and we moved into this place we were living in the later half of 2013. It wasn't the ideal place at all. I didn't want to live there, but we had no choice. We had to move. And then, of course, he starts tapering, and sleepless nights. I can't even tell you how many nights I spent up with him all night, trying to rub him and massage him because he was in so much pain, trying to get him to sleep by soothing him and rubbing him, his back, his shoulders, his arms, his legs, his feet, nodding off, going to sleep myself because I had to work in the morning, and just like, what the fuck is going on, and when is this going to stop? Those were my two thoughts, and his thoughts all the time. Like, what is the fuck is going on? We had no idea what we were facing. And, but we knew we had to get off him. We couldn't stay on him anymore. Because these motherfucking medications that he was on cause heart attacks, strokes, you name it, they cause it. So, so we got through to the end of 2013, and by that time, it got so bad for him and us with the withdrawals that we could no longer support ourselves. We can't support on my salary, so he had to shut the business down, which was really hard for him. But we had to do it, and we had to do it with no help. I had barely any help doing it. It was so stressful. But we did it, and the last thing we wanted to do was move in with my mom, because we are both very independent. We don't like to ask for help, but we had no choice. But before we even went that route of moving in with my mom, we decided that we would give an attempt to move to Washington, which is where my husband lived for many years. And the place that he lived is an environment that is very conducive to rest and peace. It's out in the wilderness, in a remote area. And we thought by going there that we would get a break. He could be in nature, he could be outside, he could be back where he used to be, where he used to meditate and pray and be at one with himself and his friends. He had friends there. And we'd have support from his friends and be able to have the right kind of environment that you need to help you get off these meds. So we went up there and we stayed briefly with a friend of his that was gracious enough to let us stay in a home of hers that was not even, it was basically just a skeleton of a home, just a frame. So we had to basically bring our tent. So we were like sleeping in a tent in the house, but it didn't even have windows or, you know, anything like that. So we tried that. It was too much work, you know, too much physical work, you know, because I need to be taking care of him. I'm run down. I'm driving all over the place like a mad woman, trying to keep the business going, you know, a little bit. And it just didn't work out, and we knew it wasn't working out. We were running through our savings, the last of our savings. So we didn't want to come back, but we couldn't buy a home. We didn't have enough money to buy a home, and we couldn't really live anywhere else permanently. We couldn't afford rent. I wasn't going to be able to find anything full-time with the kind of work I do, especially up there. So, and I didn't. So we're like, great, we're going to have to come back. So on our way back, we, you know, went through actually the coast of Oregon, which we really enjoyed, and we basically lived there on the coast of Oregon for a couple months in a campsite. We go to different campsites because we didn't want to go back. We didn't want to go back to the city, into the chaos, into the nightmare we came out of. And, you know, for those of you that have gone through this, when every single part of your body is being affected, especially the mind and the brain, by coming off these meds, you need a very quiet, peaceful, low noise, low stress place to live. Okay, if you can find a place like that in the city, more power to you. The place we were living at, that was not conducive to that. So we were just dreading coming back. So we stayed in the wilderness, you know, in Oregon, by the coast as long as we could. And then that got too much, you know, just physically. The physical work that's required, you know, to have the campsite and drive, you know, 20 miles to a shower, and it was just too much. So we ended up coming back, and we asked my mom if we could stay with her, and we were thinking, and I think my husband shared this in his video, that it was going to be temporary. We kept thinking, okay, well, if he just continues to taper, once he, you know, finishes the tapering or gets a significant reduction in the medications, he'll be fine. Well, yeah, because we didn't know. We didn't know the truth, which is that is not the case, as a lot of you already know that. So we came down here, and he basically, at this point, this was 2014. Some point in the middle of 2014, you know, beginning, middle of 2014. You know, it was hard for him. I mean, you know, being a man who provides, who's used to providing, to be absolutely 100% helpless and powerless, to move in with his mother-in-law he barely knows, into a tiny house. You know, it was hard for him and for me, but we had to do it, and we're both grateful for that, and for my mom. And and we just kept at what we were doing, what we could do. So I started working down here part time, and then taking care of him full time, and just watching the day in and day out suffering of what you see when someone is just under attack from the top of their head to the bottom of their feet and everywhere in between. Every single, organ and tissue and muscle and, everything, because that's what these medications uh, do. But when you're withdrawing. And it's horrific. It's horrific to watch someone suffer every single day, day in and day out. It's draining. It's debilitating. Talk about being hopeless and powerless. The only thing that kept me going, for those of you that are in my situation right now, the only thing that kept me going is I have a strong faith. I am not religious. I'm spiritual, if anything. I don't go to church. I'm not affiliated with any religion, neither is my husband. But I do have a strong faith and belief system that there are greater forces, benevolent forces out there that watch over us and take care of us and do help us, even in the midst of what we're going through, even when it feels like they're not. And it could be just a silly fantasy, a hope, to keep me going. But it's there. And it did keep me going, which helped keep him going, because a lot of times you have no hope. I mean, you're just a mess when you're withdrawing and just trying to figure out if you're going to survive the next day. And, so by me having hope and that strength, that hope and faith provides, that I was able to help him have even if a little bit of hope, a little bit of strength. And I still continue to do that, because I still, even though now we're going on 3 years, hopefully we feel like we're at the tail end of this. And so now I do still have hope. I do still have faith. It's not easy. I have my days where I'm completely 100% depressed and I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to go on anymore, because this is what your life is day in and day out. And when you have no friends to talk to and no support, it's fucked. So, um, so that's what I'd like to share for what it's worth, that helped me. And then, of course, like I said, my husband, um, get through our darkest days and weeks and months, because there were some major, dark days where, I think this was in 2014. We're talking about the middle of 2014, where, he just said to me, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this one more day. I can't stand these racing thoughts. If you could just hop in my body for 1 minute, you would want to kill yourself. It's basically he was hanging on for us, for me, for us, right? But even that isn't enough. I get it. I mean, obviously I'm not in his body, but I get it. And of course, telling your spouse all this, not on, purposely trying to upset me, of course it's going to upset you, right? Because you're like, because there's nothing you can do. I can't magically zap him to make him better. I can't, you know, people talk about, okay, we'll try chamomile, try lavender, try, the 5 million different alternative herbs and supplements out there that you can, and they don't work. Maybe they work for some of you, and that's great, but they didn't work for him. Um, and so we, so, he's telling me this, and I'm just like, fuck, now what? What do we do now? I go back to another psychiatrist, get him on more meds, you know, um, go have him see a therapist. They're clueless. They have no idea what's going on, what this is about. This is an epidemic. As people have said on YouTube, this is a fucking epidemic that is only now being recognized by the psychiatric industry and the professional, industry, that deals with these people. But it still has a long ways to go. We can keep putting our videos on YouTube, but we got to be also educating the medical profession and everybody in between, that deals with us about therapists, on and so on about the truth about these meds. And in the meantime, we're going to keep suffering, and it's terrible, but it's the truth. Now, that was my whole thing. There's no magic pill to counteract these other pills. There's no doctor that's going to magically get them better. There's no, at least at this point, any alternative methods that are going to help. And although, like I said, that one, the Row Back program, those supplements were helping a little bit. Not a lot, but they helped a little. And I'm feeling powerless and hopeless. Like, my God, my husband is fucking having a major crisis every single day, not wanting to go on, and there's nothing I can do. So, the only thing I could do, like I said, is I pray. Even though, like I said, I'm not religious, I did pray. And I'm telling you, over the last, 3.5 years, I prayed more than I have in my whole life. The prayers that I've done, I could have lifetimes worth of living to equal the amount of prayers that I've done, And you get to the point with all this, where you see the up and downs of your spouse going through all this, where you're like, are they even being answered? Like, is this just, I am so sick of praying. I'm at the point I'm tired of it. I'm just, you kind of get this acceptance of like, okay, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Like, of course, I don't want the worst case scenario, right? Of my husband dying, or God forbid, or some other morbid, disease or situation happening. I don't believe that. But, I just accept, and you have to also live in the moment as best as you can. You can't get into the future. You can't be projecting about the future unless, of course, I'll speak for myself. I project, or I think about a positive future. I try to think about him getting better, and it's been working because he is, slowly but surely. But it's been extremely slow. And as you know, if you've watched the other YouTube videos, it is an extremely slow process, right? Because once you actually get off the medications, then the rewiring that has to take place, takes a while for all of it to happen, right? Some people took a year and a half till they started feeling better. So we're prepared for that. but when, getting back to the middle of 2013, when he was saying this to me, it was bleak, it was dark, it was bad. It, um, it'll bring the strongest person. I thought I was strong. I had a lot of faith. I was pretty positive and optimistic, with life. Bring the strongest person down. That's what this does. And so I had to learn to stay in the moment, to stay in today, to not project negative, even though the fear was there, that I was afraid he was going to die or something was going to terrible happen. I had to just stop those thoughts as best as I could. Try to focus on something else, get busy with something, whatever. Um, uh, just staying in today, just, getting through one day at a time, or 1 minute at a time, or 1 hour at a time. This is my life for the last 3 years. This is what I do to the best of my ability, and so does he. Because otherwise it's too overwhelming. And you get depressed and hopeless so fast, get into such a spin, you just want to kill yourself. I mean, maybe I'm the only one. I don't know. I mean, I don't have kids, so it's totally different when you have children. But when you don't, and you're being presented with all this, and you start getting hopeless and nothing seems to be changing or getting better, only worse, you just think, and we have, like, okay, let's just end it. Fuck this, because I believe we'll go on to a better life. I just do. So, at least not one that's full of more suffering and hopelessness and despair and hell. I just don't believe that. This is hell. Um, so, this, these are my thoughts. They've been my thoughts. I've shared them with my husband. Maybe I shouldn't, but I did. And of course, he tells me the same thing. He's been telling me since 2013 that he has these moments of despair, which are totally understandable. We know people on YouTube, right? You've seen the videos. They can't do it one more second. They end their life. We totally get it. This is hell. This is an epidemic. This is something, as a lot of people have said, we need to talk about and we need to educate others about, because it's not going away. And so he actually, and I don't remember if he shared this in his video, but he actually had a suicide attempt, I believe in 2013 or 14. Now I'm kind of lose track of time, but and that was one of the darkest moments, because he didn't let me know. But I knew something was going on that day when he got in the car and the look on his face, and he didn't want me to go with him. And I was like, oh my God. And so he went down to the beach, because we live kind of close to the beach, and he put a gun to his head, and he was ready to pull the trigger, and then a woman saw him and stopped him, and basically saved his life, and said that her husband had committed suicide years ago, and she didn't want to see him go through that and me go through that. So she saved his life. He should be dead. So I'm very grateful for her. Angela, her name's Angela. If you're watching this by any chance, we're extremely grateful. We're saddened and we're sorry that, your husband did kill himself, and we're just grateful that you saved his life. And then I believe he shared, fast forward 2014, his first massive heart attack. He should have died. I mean, his artery was his major artery was 95 or something like that percent blocked, and it had been like that for like weeks and months. Usually, in his case, he's got 6 minutes to get to the hospital and get worked on. So that was an absolute miracle that he survived that. And I just remember another extreme dark day of the many dark days that we've had was that fucking day. I was all alone in the hospital. I had no friends to call. My family was busy, so busy. I couldn't get a hold of them. Everybody's busy, right? So, I was just there. I mean, I did reach out to his family and one of his friends and talk to them. But other than that, I was there by myself, wondering if my husband was going to live or die one more time in that same situation. Is he going to live or die? Is he going to live or die? I mean, this is what you go through as the spouse, as the significant other, at least in my situation. And then, of course, what do? There's not the only one thing I can do, and that's what I already shared with you, is I pray. I just prayed and prayed. And, of course, he lived. And then, 2014 to 2015 were same situation, He's trying to taper. He's tapering. It's very slow. He's getting tired of it. He's hanging in there by a thread. I'm hanging in there by a thread. I'm worn out. I'm exhausted. I'm doing 2 jobs. Taking care of him full time, wondering, is this ever going to get better? Are we ever going to be able to get on with our lives and move out and have money coming in and pay the bills and have a family, the things that everybody wants, right? At least most of us want, that are in relationships. And we're like, I don't know. I mean, we hope so. At least I did. But it was dark. It was sad, You see people when you're out and about that have their kids and they seem so happy and they're with their, significant other and they seem to be doing so well and, everybody's healthy and happy and having a good time, and we're like, oh fuck, like, wow, is that ever going to be us? And I'm sure a lot of you have gone through that or are going through that, right? And you just move on, because what else are you going to do, right? You just keep putting one foot in front of the other and moving on, and that's what we do, and we keep doing. So, I know he shared this in his video in 2015, May, or wait, was it 6? I'm so lost with the dates at this point. No, it was actually this year, May 2016. So we went through a whole 2015, same thing, He was off the Seroquel and the Thorazine at this time, but he had other meds that were added to help him sleep. So he's on those, trying to sleep, having issues with sleeping and anxiety and, the whole thing, the whole deal. And we're trying to change his supplements to try to get him to work. And it's just like, this is like your life, right? Trying to manage all this. And for me, supporting and helping him out. And so somehow miraculously we get through 2015, barely. We had so many dark days there, just incredibly dark. And so we get through, and then of course in May of 2016, he has another massive heart attack. It is the same exact artery from 2014, because the doctors who put the stent in the first time, the stent was too small. So they had to go back in and put a brand new stent in that was bigger. Okay? So he should have died again because he was in the ER for so long. Them telling him he's not having a heart attack, even though it was clear beyond a shadow of a doubt. Even a lay person could figure out he was having a heart attack, but they didn't want to deal with it and call um, the cardiac doctors in, and it was just a nightmare. So it's a miracle he's still alive, because something like 7 hours later they fucking bring him in there and put another stent in while he's in a massive pain in his chest. Now, maybe some of you are wondering, were these heart attacks possibly related to the medications? Well, you tell me. Um, when we had gone to see this nutritionist back in the beginning to help us taper off these, he said, if you stay on these meds, they're going to give you heart attacks. Okay. Well, we didn't end up getting off of them until maybe a year later. So I don't know. Maybe they did. Or maybe, stress is a number one killer. Or stress is, you get more heart attacks from stress than anything else. So absolutely, the stress of all this absolutely could have caused these heart attacks. Okay? We believe it. So, we go back to the beginning. Before I met him, back in 2008, when he got on all these poisons, and he should have never got on them. He went in there because he was depressed and he wanted to sleep, because he was getting out of a relationship and he was working 70 hours a week, and he just wanted to sleep. So any psychiatrist in their right mind, I used to work for one, and so did my mom, so I know a lot about the meds, would have put him on a sleep med, right? Which aren't good for you either, and they're very addictive, but at least they're not Thorazine and Seroquel antipsychotics, plus Klonopin, which we found out was originally in the 70s, I believe, used for epilepsy. Yeah. But then the FDA, good old FDA, approved them for use in the with the psychiatrists and the other medical doctors, for what, anxiety or sleep issues. Ridiculous. They were used for epilepsy. I mean, once you start doing your research about all this, the more you find, the more you don't want to know. So I don't know how many of you have actually done that, but I have. I've had a lot of time on my hands, so I have. I was pretty naive. A lot of us are, about the pharmaceutical industry. So at this point, we went from blaming and wanting to kill his doctor, his psychiatrist at Kaiser, who tried to kill him by purposely misdiagnosing him and giving him these poisons, to realizing that whether he knew what these medications could actually do or not, the real culprit, so to speak, is the pharmaceutical industry, or what a lot of people refer to as big pharma. So if you are interested, you can Google. I mean, at this point, big pharma is everywhere. I mean, when you Google, and I actually have a book here I got, and it's called Side Effects: The Hidden Agenda of the Pharmaceutical Drug Cartel. Yeah, because it's a drug cartel. Legal. A Legal Drug Cartel. And it's a good book. I haven't read like every single page, but I kind of browsed through it and I got enough of an understanding of what we're up against and what we're dealing with. Okay, so the bottom line is not to be on these medications in the first place. And if you can find alternative um, therapies and supplements, etc., absolutely use those. Um, that's not what they want. They want you to be on their meds because that's how they make their money, right? Because it's all run by greed. Um, but, you know, my husband learned the hard way um, about the truth of what these medications really are and how they damage every part of the body, every part of the brain. Um, and thankfully and gratefully, uh, people are getting off of them and having positive experiences. And so that's what we're looking for. That's what we're seeing so far. And like I said, the medical marijuana is helping my husband. You know, I'm not saying it's for everybody, but it is at least getting him to sleep and having him sleep pretty consistently. So we're happy about that. And it helps, like I said, with the anxiety and the physical body pain. Um, and you know, for those of you that have a family member, a loved one, a spouse, a significant other, and all you can do is what I've done is watch them suffer day in and day out, not knowing what to do, trying to help them, not being able to help them, feeling powerless, hopeless, helpless, depressed, stressed, frustrated, angry, everything. You'll go through every emotion out there, you know. Just know that, you know, you're not alone, that you're not alone, you know, that you will be able to get through this with them, with your spouse, with your significant other, with your friend, with your family member. You know, what they want is they want you to be as supportive as possible, as non-judgmental as possible, as loving and compassionate as possible. And if you get to a place, which you will, where you get fearful, um, angry, bitter, frustrated, the whole gamut, you know, it's a lot for them. You got to walk away. You got to take care of yourself. You got to, you know, get yourself back together. You know, process, feel the emotions, right? But move forward and know you're not alone in this. That you have support. That it's out there, and and I just knowing that I'm getting through it and I've gotten through it. You know, sometimes I look back like, how the fuck did I do this? Even to my husband, like, how did we get through this? How are we getting through this? I mean, you know, we're just like how could any marriage or relationship survive this? You know, it's sad that a lot of them don't. But, you know, that's great to those that have and are, because you know, you got to have some kind of belief system that keeps you going, where you don't give up the fight, where you find an inner strength, where, you know, in my case, I believe there's benevolent beings out there, you know, a love out there that is so strong and powerful that even though we're going through all this, it's seeing us through this, and will continue to see us through this, even though it doesn't feel like it. It's there because we're still here and we're still marching on and we're still moving on and we're still hanging in there, maybe by a thread, but some days, but we're still hanging in there. Another major, major important thing that helped me and my husband in our relationship through all this and ourselves, huge, major, is laughter and humor. Okay? I can't even stress to you. I used to be a very serious person. I'm, you know, that was years ago. I still have a lot of lightening up to do, but you know, I love to laugh and joke, and my husband does too. Like, he's such a joker, and that's so important. You know, even if you can't laugh in whatever in that particular situation, at least some point you've got to have some humor about this. You know, my husband and I have had endless dialogue of, you know, the crazy things that have happened to us and we've gone through, which I haven't even gotten into in this video, neither has he. I mean, there's some crazy shit that has happened to us and we've gone through about over this that we haven't even gotten to because it's so out there crazy that, you know, we go through and we put up with and happen to us because we're going through this. And, you know, so we joke about it. Yeah, you kind of have to make light of it and joke about it. And we do. You know, and it gets us through. And we pretty much do it every day. We have a dose every day of some good laughter and humor. Okay? And again, it doesn't take away from the seriousness of the situation or the emotions that you have every right to feel and process in your own time, in your own way. So it requires a tremendous amount of patience that I consider myself one of the most impatient people you'll meet, although I have gotten more patient, you know, because you have to through this. You know, I want everything now. You know, I've always been that way. My husband is the opposite. So, you know, fuck. Talk about having to learn patience. You know, they say love is patient. Yeah, it is. You won't make it unless you're patient. There's no way. Because you don't even know. Like you'll have these moments where you're like, oh my God, he's feeling better. He's sleeping better. Maybe things are finally going to turn around. And then, nosedive, another crash, right? Another down the roller coaster because that was short lived. And I've had so many of those, you know, not his fault, but this is part of the withdrawal. This is how it goes. It's up and down and up and down until finally, you know, you get this leveling out. Okay? So, you know, up and down fucking roller coaster, you start learning, okay, maybe it's great for what it's worth. We'll see what happens. You kind of learn not to put too much into it and just take it for what it is. And like if you know, he gets better and he's feeling better and it's great for those couple of days or a week, wonderful. You know, and you hope the other shoe doesn't drop, but you just don't know because we don't know if we're 100% out of it yet or not, you know. We think we are. We're on a track we haven't been in. Since it started. So, you know, so again, you know, for those of you that are in the midst of this, know you're not alone. Know that you can and will get through this, like I have, like we have. You know, I mean, do what you need to do. I mean, if you need to break away, if you need to take care of yourself, you got to do that. Get your support from your friends and your family. You know, pray or whatever you do, meditate, whatever you need to do. Make sure you laugh, like I said, have a lot of humor, watch a lot of funny movies. You know, surround yourself with positive people. Be careful of what you watch. You know, as far as like movies and TV and stuff like that. You don't want to have a lot of negativity coming in. We learned that, you know. Um, and you'll get through it. You will. So one step, one day at a time, you will get through it. And this is what my husband and I continue to believe because, you know, as I said, he should be dead. You know, there's 3 separate occasions where he comes this close to dying and he lives over and over and over. So we kind of feel like maybe, who knows, maybe he's here for a reason. You know, if anything, just to share hope with you guys, just like I am. You know, I don't want to go on too much longer. That was pretty much what I wanted to communicate. And I hope that you and your family are well. I wish you all well on this journey back to recovery, being 100% free of these poisons. Um, uh, Guys, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They purposely know what goes into these drugs, and they push them and they push them onto the medical community because they want us to suffer. They want us to die. They want us to be in a coma. You know, you see people walking around on their antidepressants and their, you know, benzodiazepines, you know, for anxiety and for depression. And I'm not saying that those don't help some people because I know they do. But for most of us, they don't. And they only hurt us in the end, especially when we try to get off of them. And that's what they're designed to do. And that's what they're designed for, is to keep us in a coma. So they, the powers that be, can do what they want to do and have their agenda and gain more power and more money um, at our expense because they have no heart, they have no soul, they have no empathy. They really don't. So if they can bring you down, if they can bring your family down, if they can bring anybody else around you down, they can and they will. So that's why you have to kind of have a mentality also of like, you know, like a person who's not going to let somebody or, you know, these people in power and control who control the big pharma, who are behind big pharma, um, destroy us, destroy you, destroy your family. You know, it's us against them. And it's love against a lack of empathy, against indifference, against feeling nothing, you know, and knowing people are dying all around the world, not just here in the United States, um, or if they're not dying, significantly suffering, family members suffering. You know, that was another thing I forgot to mention. Sorry, I'll end this real quick. I never get sick. I prided myself in never getting sick. You know, I before I met my husband, my life really wasn't complicated or stressful. I mean, it, you know, not majorly. Um, you know, I mean, I had stressors, but nothing like this. And as a result of years of going through this, you know, with him, um, I was hospitalized. I had a perforated appendix that was ready to burst. You know, I barely made it to the hospital in time because I was convinced like you have to be a level 10 pain to have an appendix rupture, or you have to have a massive fever, which I didn't. I didn't have a level 10 pain. I didn't have a massive fever. So I kept thinking, it's not, you know, my appendix, what? So anyway, I had my appendix taken out, and then they failed to give me antibiotics for whatever reason. So when I got out of the hospital, I had no antibiotics, and what happens? I got an infection, a major infection. So I went back into the hospital for 6 days on a antibiotic cocktail, intravenously for 6 days to try to clear the infection. And so why am I saying this? Because stress, emotions, this will wear you down. It's not just about the person who's being affected by being on the meds and trying to get off of them. It's the people that are around them that they're closest to. You know, in my case, you know, my husband's case, me, his wife, breaking down, being relatively pretty healthy, and all the stress, you know, it breaks you down. Even the strongest fucking person, it will. It will. And like I said, this is by design. I am 100% convinced, and from the videos I've watched and the books I've read, since, I'm 100% convinced that this is no accident. It is an agenda imposed by the pharmaceutical industry, and it goes even higher up than that if you want to research it. And they don't have any plans on stopping anytime soon unless we keep exposing them and what they're doing and getting the information out there and educating people about it that are open and willing to listen. You know, fighting against it, standing up against it, you know, not letting them take us down anymore, because that's what they want to do. We have to fight. And, you know, as I've been told, the best way to fight is with love. It's not like you're fighting with love, but I mean, not coming back with them with more anger and more protests and more, you know, this kind of a thing, which they could care less. It's really just having the awareness, knowing what's going on, helping your loved one and yourself, and with love. You know, I mean, we do these videos with love because we care about each other. We want to help each other, and we want to tell what's going on, and we want people to know they're not alone, and we want support. And ultimately, love conquers evil. And so it is with love that I say what I'm saying to all of you, and knowing that love, you know, like an infinite kind of love, not like the love that, you know, is, you know, romantic love or conditional love, but I mean a true unconditional, non-judgmental love that just goes beyond this world, really, that I believe will help us, help us by working through us to help each other to fight against this. Because, like I said, you know, it's not going to end anytime soon, and it only seems to be getting worse. So, with that, I'm going to sign off, and I hope this video has helped you, and maybe, you know, hopefully shed some light on some things for you, or, you know, at least helped you feel like you're not alone. Yeah, and that's it. So take care of yourselves, and, you know, peace. I wish you peace and health and happiness.